The box model is a fundamental concept in web development that describes how every element on a web page is represented as a rectangular box. This model details how the size of boxes or elements is calculated and how they interact with each other on the page. Each box consists of 4 distinct parts. Content, the area where text, images, or other elements are displayed. Padding, the space between the content and the border. Padding is inside the box and increases the space within the box itself. Border, a visible outline that surrounds the padding and the content. It is a part of the outer dimensions of the box. Margin, the space outside the border. It separates the box from neighboring elements. The total size of an element is calculated by adding up the content's width and height, padding, borders, and margins. The content size is primarily controlled by the width and height properties of an element. These properties directly affect the size of the content area, but do not include padding, borders, or margins. Padding is the space between the content and the border. You can adjust padding using the padding property. It can be set for all 4 sides simultaneously or individually for the top, right, bottom, and left sides. You can also use the padding property as a shorthand for top, right, bottom, and left. Borders are used to define the outline of an element. You can control their style, width, and color using CSS properties. The border style property defines the style of the border. You can set this to dotted, dashed, solid, double, groove, ridge, inset, and outset. The absence of this property means no border will be displayed. The border width property specifies the thickness of the border. You can use different units like pixels, percentages, and rem. The border color property sets the color of the border. You can use color names, hex codes, or RGB values. You can specify all of these properties individually for each side of the box, top, right, bottom, and left, or use shorthand properties to set them all at once. The border radius CSS property is used to round the corners of an element's border, transforming sharp edges into smooth, rounded ones. It can accept 1 to 4 values to specify the radii of all 4 corners individually, or use a single value to uniformly round all corners. Additionally, border radius can define elliptical corners by specifying 2 sets of values for horizontal and vertical radii, separated by a slash. This property not only applies to the borders, but also affects the element's background, enabling the creation of elements with rounded edges or fully circular shapes, enhancing the visual aesthetics and user interface design of a web page. Margin is the space outside the border. It separates the element from other elements. Margins can be set to all 4 sides simultaneously or individually, and you can also use the shorthand property for top, right, bottom, and left. By default, the width and height you specify for an element apply only to the content box. If you add padding and borders, they increase the overall dimensions of the element. The box sizing CSS property can alter this behavior. By default, the content box is used. This means that the width and height include only the content. The border box means the width and height include the content, padding, and border, but not the margin. To make the sizing more intuitive, especially when adding padding and borders, you can set the box sizing to border box. This way, the width and height you specify will always be the total size of the element, including content, padding, and borders, making it easier to size elements precisely. Combining your knowledge of the box model and the border styling can dramatically improve the look and feel of your web pages. Here's an example that incorporates all 3 concepts. With these CSS rules, we define an element with specific dimensions, padding, and we apply a solid blue border around it. Experimenting with these properties will help you understand their impact and how they work together to create visually appealing designs.